Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating, a stack of sources about one single moment in the Mahabharata.
Right. Draupadi's marriage. The Vaivahika Parva.
Exactly. And it seems simple on the surface, a princess chooses her husband at a swayamvara, a contest.
But it's anything but simple. The consequences just ripple outwards.
That's our mission today. To sort of unpack how this victory leads to these huge moral questions, brings in, divine intervention.
And really sets the stage for the main conflict later on. It forces you to think about fate, duty, social rules.
All colliding in this one event. So let's dive in. The setup first. Arjuna wins the contest. Amazing archery feat.
Yeah, incredible skill. But here's the thing. The Pandavas are undercover. They're disguised as poor Brahmins, having lost their kingdom.
So this victory is huge. It shows their power, but they're still vulnerable. They have to take this princess back to a little hut they're staying in. Talk about a status downgrade.
It really highlights just how far they'd fallen, even in that moment of triumph.
A princess in a potter's hut. Okay, so they get back, and this is where it gets really messy.
They call out to their mother, Kunti, that they've brought bhiksha.
Which just means alms, right? Whatever they collected that day. Standard procedure for them then.
Exactly. And Kunti, probably busy, not even looking up, just says the usual.
Share it among yourselves, like she'd say every day.
But then she sees Draupadi, and suddenly that completely automatic instruction becomes this massive crisis.
Wow. Because her word, a mother's command.
The Matru Vakya. It was considered inviolable dharma, a sacred duty you just couldn't ignore, even if it was, an accident.
An accidental command, but binding. You can imagine Draupadi's father, King Draupad, and her brother. They must have been horrified.
Oh, absolutely. Sharing one wife, polygamy was already uncommon, sometimes frowned upon. Polyandry was, basically unheard of, socially a disaster.
It just wasn't done. So how do they resolve this impossible situation? The sources say it takes divine help.
It does. The great sage Vyasa arrives, and crucially, Krishna and Balarama are there too, adding this divine and political weight.
Okay, so the big guns are called in. What does Vyasa do?
Vyasa provides the backstory, the justification. He tells everyone about Draupadi's previous life.
Oh, there's a past life connection.
Yes. Apparently she was a woman who couldn't find a suitable husband and prayed intensely to Lord Shiva. She asked him 5 times for a husband with all the virtues.
5 times?
Yeah.
Okay, I see where this might be going.
Exactly. Shiva was pleased and granted her wish by promising her 5 husbands in her next life, each embodying those qualities she asked for.
So the marriage isn't just Kunti's mistake, it's framed as like preordained destiny, fulfilling a divine boon.
Precisely. It shifts it from a socially unacceptable human mess to something divinely willed. It calms Drupad's fears and makes it, within the story's logic, acceptable. Dharma is shown to operate on multiple levels, you see.
Okay, so destiny makes it okay. But practically, 5 husbands, 1 wife. That sounds like a recipe for conflict, especially among powerful brothers. How did they manage it?
They needed strict rules. The sources are clear on this. They agreed Draupadi would live with each brother for 1 year at a time.
Sequentially.
Yes. And during that year, the other 4 brothers were strictly forbidden from entering their private quarters. Any violation had serious consequences. There was also a yearly vow involved, taken before fire.
To maintain harmony and respect boundaries. And this was a full marriage. They had children.
Yes, absolutely. Draupadi had 1 son with each Pandava. They're known as the Upa-Pandavas. Pradavindhya with Yudhishthira, Shrutasena with Arjuna, and so on. It shows it was seen as a complete, if unique, marital union.
Still, it must have constantly flown in the face of what society expected.
Completely. The epic itself presents it as highly unusual, an exception driven purely by divine will, by that boon from Shiva. It highlights this tension between normal social rules and a higher, perhaps fated, path.
And that very uniqueness, having 5 husbands, becomes a vulnerability for her later, doesn't it?
Tragically, yes. People like Duryodhana and Karna use it to insult and humiliate her publicly, especially during the infamous dice game and the disrobing attempt. Her unique status becomes a weapon against her.
Which brings us to the impact. How does this one marriage shape the rest of the Mahabharata? It feels central.
It's absolutely pivotal. On one hand, it solidifies the Pandavas. Sharing Draupadi binds them together in a way nothing else could have. Their unity is essential for their survival and eventual fight.
So it prevents internal conflict over her.
Yes. But on the other hand, the insults and humiliation Draupadi suffers because of this marriage, especially the disrobing, that becomes a primary reason for the Kurukshetra war. It fuels their quest for vengeance.
Wow. So it both unites them and sows the seeds of the Great War. And it raises huge questions too, right? About dharma, women's rights.
Definitely. Yudhishthira gambling her away, her own powerful questioning of dharma in the assembly hall. She really challenges the patriarchal norms and interpretations of duty and ownership. It makes you ask, what is dharma in such extreme situations?
So looking back at the Vaivahika Parva through these sources, it's so much more than just how they got married.
It's a microcosm of the epic's major themes. The complexity of dharma, how actions have unforeseen consequences, the interplay of human choice, social pressure, and maybe destiny.
It secures a Pandava's bond, but directly leads to the conflict that defines them. It raises these timeless issues about justice, morality.
And how rigidly we should stick to rules versus when circumstances demand a different path.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about. When faced with a clash between established norms and a truly unique, perhaps even divinely suggested situation, how do we navigate that? How do we decide what right action really means? Something to consider.